I'm leaving you, Wisdom. She said it the way she delivered boardroom presentations, clean, rehearsed, with no space left for interruption. She placed a sealed envelope between the bread basket and my water glass like she was tabling an agenda item. Like 5 years of marriage was a line item that hadn't been performing. My name is Wisdom Dickson. I am 33 years old. I am a financial analyst who knows how to read numbers the way other men read faces. Every figure tells a story. Every pattern has a motive. Every anomaly is a confession waiting to be understood. I have spent the last 91 days understanding my wife. We were sitting at Lena's bistro. She'd chosen it. Kendra always chose places with white tablecloths when she wanted witnesses to her composure. She'd ordered the salmon, I'd ordered the steak. I remember thinking, when the waiter walked away, that she looked almost peaceful. The way a person looks when they've already made a decision and no longer have to carry the weight of making it. She placed that envelope on the table and said those words, and I looked at it for a moment. Cream-colored paper. Her name was on the return address. Not ours, just hers. She'd already moved, at least on paper, before she'd told me she was going. I picked up my water glass and took a slow sip. Okay, I said. Something shifted in her eyes. A flicker, small, but I'd spent 5 years learning her face, so I caught it. She'd prepared for anger, tears, maybe desperation. She had not prepared for okay. Okay, she repeated. I heard you. She opened her mouth. I could see her recalibrating, reaching for the next line in the script she'd rehearsed, probably in the bathroom mirror at whatever hotel she'd been at last Tuesday, the one downtown, the one I'd found on the joint credit card 6 weeks after I found the first one, the one that had started all of this. And then the front door of Lena's bistro swung open. 3 men walked in. Dark coats. One had a federal badge clipped to his belt. I could see it from across the room. The other 2 took positions at the entrance like they'd done this before, which they had, many times, because this was not their first service. The man in the middle, I recognized. I recognized him because I had called him. Because 91 days of spreadsheets and silence had led to a phone call with an old college friend who worked in financial crimes, and that phone call had led here, to this restaurant, to this table, to this specific Tuesday. Behind them, hands loosely bound, shirt wrinkled, face hollow in the way a man's face goes hollow when the performance is over, was Darren Holt. Kendra's fork hit her plate. I didn't look at her. I watched the agent's hand move to his jacket, reaching inside, reaching for something, and I picked up my fork and cut into my steak. Please, before I continue, kindly like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories. 3 months before that lunch, I found a number, not a dramatic number, just $340. A hotel charge on our joint credit card. The Caldwell Hotel, downtown, on a Tuesday. The same Tuesday, Kendra told me she was at a conference in Atlanta. Most men would have confronted her. I opened a spreadsheet. I went back 18 months. Every transaction, every receipt. I cross-referenced her calendar, her LinkedIn check-ins, her Uber history, still connected to the family account she'd forgotten I could access. I worked after she went to bed, on a laptop I bought in cash and kept in my car, in the dark of our parking garage while she slept upstairs in the bed we shared. 91 days, 14 hotel charges, $22,000 moved out of our savings in increments of $800, always just under the federal reporting threshold. And 1 email she had forwarded from her work account to a personal Gmail I'd never heard of. I didn't confront her. I called Brian Briggs, college friend, FBI Financial Crimes Division, first conversation in 4 years. I think my wife is being used as a financial mule, I said. I need to know how deep it goes. He said, send me everything. Tonight. Agent Briggs stopped at our table. He looked at me first. A brief professional nod, the kind 2 men exchange when a plan arrives exactly on schedule. Then he looked at Kendra. Mrs. Kendra Dickson? Her voice came out thin. Yes? He reached into his jacket and placed a folded document beside her untouched salmon. Gently, almost courteously. Federal subpoena. You're required to appear before a grand jury, United States versus Darren Holt, financial fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering across 7 states. The nearby tables went still. The jazz kept playing. Nobody moved. Kendra stared at the document. Her hands were flat on the table like she needed them to keep herself anchored. "I don't," she started. "You have 14 days to retain counsel." Briggs glanced at me once more. Something passed between us, invisible to everyone else in that room, then turned and walked back toward the door. Darren was still standing near the entrance. He looked at Kendra. Then, deliberately, quietly, he looked away. I picked up my fork and kept eating. "Wisdom!" Her voice dropped to a hiss. "Say something. You know people. Call someone." I chewed, swallowed, reached for my water. "This is your fault," she said, leaning forward. "You called them. You set this up." I set my glass down. "Did I launder money, Kendra? I didn't know what I was— Did I sign your name on the transfer requests?" Her jaw clenched. Her eyes were wet. Not sad wet, furious wet. The kind that comes from suddenly realizing you miscalculated everything. "You've been waiting for this," she said. "This whole lunch. You knew— You transferred $22,000 out of our savings. That's not a conversation. That's a departure." She pushed back her chair, reached for the envelope, her divorce papers. Still sitting between us, I slid it back across the table toward her. "Don't bother opening it," I said. "I already filed mine. 6 weeks ago." She grabbed her phone. Her fingers were shaking. I watched her dial, and I thought about day 78 of my spreadsheet, the night I sat in my car in this same city and finally called my father for the first time in 3 years. How he picked up on the second ring. How I said I need help. How he didn't ask why. He just said, "Tell me what you need." 5 words. I cried the whole drive home. Darren was being escorted toward the exit. He passed within 4 feet of our table. Kendra turned in her chair. She needed him to look at her, to stop, to say something that confirmed that everything she'd dismantled our marriage for was real. "Darren," she said it softly, like a question, like she was still giving him the chance to be who she'd believed he was. He kept walking, eyes on the floor, shoulders curved inward like a man already rehearsing his plea deal. The door swung shut. Kendra sat back. Her chest moved fast and shallow. Her work phone lit up on the table, HR director, and she silenced it without looking. "He gave you money," I said. Not an accusation, just a statement. "Called it investment returns, consulting fees, said you'd earned it, said you deserved it." She said nothing. "He gave every woman in the scheme the same speech, the same hotel, the same story." I looked at her. "You weren't the first. You weren't even the second." Her face shifted, pride cracking, reality arriving slow and total. "How do you know that?" "I read the federal filing, all 212 pages. Kendra's composure was fracturing. Her voice rose, not a full scene, not quite, but enough for the tables nearest us to go quiet again. I was suffocating wisdom. Every day the same apartment, the same salary, the same routine. I was disappearing. "Then you should have told me." "I tried." "You don't listen." "You moved $22,000 out of our savings account. That's not a conversation. That's a departure." She pushed back her chair. "I'm leaving." "Kendra." Not my voice. A voice from the left. Table 7. A woman stood up, mid-40s, dark skin, silver earrings, the composed posture of someone who has been through a fire and decided never to flinch again. "I know her," she said. Not to the room, to Briggs, who had paused near the door. The restaurant went perfectly still. "Ms. Okafor." Briggs turned. "I didn't realize you were—" "I know her from the Holt Group investor calls," Sylvia Okafor said clearly. "She wasn't just a mule." A pause. Waited, precise. "She was a presenter." Kendra went pale. I had read about Sylvia Okafor in the federal filing, her company, her 61 employees, their pensions. I had read every page. I already knew what Kendra had presented on those calls. I just needed the jury to hear it. "That is a lie," Kendra said, standing now. I presented marketing analytics, audience demographics. I had no idea what those calls. Briggs reached into his coat and set a small digital recorder on the nearest empty table. He pressed play. Kendra's voice filled the restaurant, clear, confident, the voice she used in boardrooms when she needed a room to trust her completely. The asset pool in the third quarter cycle will yield a 34% return. The regulatory structure is compliant with offshore holding frameworks. Your capital is safe. The restaurant was a tomb. That was scripted, she said. He gave me a script. We'll let the grand jury determine what you knew. Briggs pocketed the recorder. That's precisely why you've been subpoenaed, Mrs. Dickson. Not arrested, yet. That word settled into the air like something with physical weight. I had listened to that recording 3 weeks ago, alone in a parking garage at 11 at night, and I had cried in my car for 20 minutes. Not for myself, for the version of her I had spent 91 days hoping to disprove. She had been on those calls. She had said those words. I had cried anyway. The agents were gone. Sylvia Okafor had sat back down, hands folded, watching nothing in particular. The restaurant slowly remembered how to breathe. I placed my napkin on the table, stood, buttoned my jacket, reached for the check the waiter had quietly slipped beside my plate because he'd seen enough to know this meal was finished. Kendra caught my arm. Wisdom. I stopped. Did you ever love me? I looked at her. The anger was completely gone from my face. What was left was something worse. Old, clean sadness that has already made its peace and no longer needs to perform anything. I didn't answer. I placed $400 on the table and walked to table 7. Ms. Okafor, I said quietly, I'm sorry about your company. She studied me. How do you know about my company? I read every public filing from your civil case, including the section on the 61 employees who lost their pension benefits. She pressed her lips together. Thank you, she said, for making the call. I nodded once and walked out. Behind me, Kendra reached into her coat pocket. Something was there, small, folded. I had slipped it in while she hung her coat at the entrance, before she even sat down, before she said a single word. Wisdom's handwriting. I loved the woman I married. I spent 91 days looking for her. She wasn't there. 2 hours later, she was still at the table. The waiter had offered to clear 3 times. She'd waved him off each time. Her attorney, Patrick Venn, the man she'd retained 6 weeks ago to finalize the divorce papers, who had spent those 6 weeks believing his client was a wronged wife seeking a clean exit, walked through the front door of Lena's Bistro at 2:47 p.m. He stepped inside, looked at Kendra, looked at the federal subpoena still visible on the white tablecloth, read the document header from across the room. He lowered his phone, turned around, walked back out. The door swung closed behind him. Kendra watched it happen without moving. She sat in the quiet restaurant where, 3 hours ago, she had arrived to end our marriage with an envelope and a practiced speech, and instead had watched everything. The affair, the plan, the future, the man she thought was saving her, collapse over a single lunch. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She picked up. Mrs. Dickson, this is the office of Judge Elias Dickson. He would like to meet with you. I don't know a judge. He's Wisdom's father. Judge Elias Dickson's office was quiet and wood-paneled and smelled like accountability. He was 67, silver-haired. He had my eyes and none of my warmth. Kendra sat across from him. I didn't do this to you, he said without preamble. My son didn't either. Wisdom came to me 3 months ago, not to destroy you. He said, Dad, I think my wife is being used. I need to know if she knew what she was involved in. Kendra's throat tightened. I helped him find the answer, the recordings, the transfers. We built a complete picture, and the picture showed someone reckless, someone unfaithful, someone who made serious errors in judgment. A pause. But not the architect of a criminal enterprise. He slid a folder across the desk. My son retained a federal defense attorney on your behalf this morning. Her retainer is paid. She knows this case completely because Wisdom briefed her personally 3 weeks ago. Kendra stared at the folder. He is filing for divorce. That will proceed, my father said. but he is making sure you don't go to prison for a man who looked away from you in a restaurant." He leaned back. "That is the kind of man you were leaving." 4 months later, I was in the parking garage beneath my office building when my phone lit up with her name. I let it ring. I sat in the car and played the voicemail. "Wisdom, I know you won't pick up. I understand why. I wanted to say thank you. For the attorney. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Not because my attorney told me to. Because I sat in that federal building for 3 days, and all I kept thinking about was how you looked at me when I asked if you ever loved me." A long pause. "How you didn't answer." The longest pause. "I think the answer was yes. I think that's the worst part." I sat in that garage for 11 minutes. Then I went to work. That evening I came home, opened my phone, and listened to it again. Then again. 11 times total. I counted. Darren Holt had been indicted on 34 counts, facing 22 years. The 61 pension holders from Sylvia Okafor's company were listed as primary restitution beneficiaries. Kendra had testified for 3 days and received full immunity. I listened to the voicemail an 11th time, then I put my phone face down on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling until I slept. 6 months after Lena's Bistro, a letter arrived. Hand-delivered. No return address. Her handwriting, that deliberate, careful penmanship she saved only for things that actually mattered. She wrote about the grand jury, about Darren's sentencing, which she attended as a material witness and left without speaking to anyone. About seeing Sylvia Okafor in the gallery, how Sylvia looked at her not with hatred, but with something like recognition. 2 women, different roads, same wreckage. She wrote about therapy. About her therapist asking why she married me in the first place, about how, for the first time, the answer didn't feel like something she needed to defend or escape from. The last paragraph was short. The woman you were looking for across those 91 days. She was real. She just got lost somewhere between who she was and who she was trying to become. I'm trying to find her again. I hope she's worth finding. Kendra. I folded the letter and placed it in the same drawer as the note I'd slipped into her coat pocket. I stood at my kitchen table for a long moment. Then I sat down, pulled out a piece of paper, and wrote back. 40 minutes. No edits. Every true thing I had left. I carried the sealed envelope for 3 days, set it on my nightstand, put it in my bag each morning, and took it out again each night. On a cold Saturday, I walked to the post office, bought 1 stamp, and mailed it. I walked home with my hands in my pockets. For the first time in almost a year, I wasn't waiting for anything. I had said what was true. For now, that was enough.